Learning a new language is challenging in many ways. A new vocabulary has to be memorized, sentence syntax has to be learned. Learning the new words and the new way of talking is only scratching the surface because each culture views life from a different vantage point. Learning a new language requires learning a new way of thinking as well. Our culture emphasizes science, so we want facts and figures. The first century culture of Palestine was story-based. They weren't concerned about accuracy of history as much as they were what principles history taught. One case in point is the creation story. We want to know if it really happened that way and when. Earlier people wanted to know what they could learn from the story. Consequently, we scrutinize everything based on what we can prove and disprove scientifically, skimming over the teachable moments in the process. The ancients wanted to learn from others how to live effectively. They took for granted the accuracy of the story, but they were more concerned about what the story could teach them about living. Today we celebrate Father's Day. Our culture is fixated on the physical accuracy of fatherhood. The ancients adopted freely without concern for DNA. In fact, Jewish law directed the adoption of children from deceased relatives. This is the cultural background to this well-known passage of Paul to the Galatians. But when the set time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Because you are his sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts. The Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but God's child. And since you are his child, God has made you also an heir. That's Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. Biblical fatherhood is an intentional relationship in this passage. Paul differentiates between the office of fatherhood and the act of fatherhood. Abba is an Aramaic term that has an emotional side to it. That's why it's untranslated in the New Testament. The Greek equivalent for Abba is pater, but it's as different as night and day. Pater refers to the family patriarch. Abba refers to the emotional bond between daddy and his child. That's who God wants to be with us. He offers to adopt us from slavery to full heir, his beloved. Whether we have great fathers or awful fathers, God offers Abba to us. No matter who we were born as, or no matter what we have done. Jesus demonstrated how much God wants to be our Abba Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we're also heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. Indeed, if we share in his sufferings, in order that we also may share in his glory. Romans chapter 8, verses 16 and 17. He paid the price for our adoption, so we get an equal share with Jesus, provided we're also willing to share in the painful responsibilities of that office as well. I hope you have a great Father's Day. Whether you have good memories or bad, God wants to change our view of fathership.